red light as some kind of therapeutic thing or, some kind of supplement you would, if you might want to call it. I thought it was kind of a load of BS, right? It kind of sounds silly. Like, why would a specific wavelength of light actually have any benefit if you flash it at you or if you're looking at it or whatever? Well, I was wrong because turns out there's some pretty interesting science behind it. And to help separate fact from fiction, I actually talked to Dr. Glen Jeffery. Now, Dr. Jeffrey, he's a neuroscientist at the University College London, where he actually focuses on this very topic, how light affects ourselves, especially in the retina. By the way, you remember I had that little issue with my retina. I was convinced enough to go ahead and buy a little red light unit, an LED unit, after hearing the show. Anyway, he's found that red light, what it does is it can help the mitochondria function better. And that's the mechanism behind this stuff. And in doing so, it can potentially even improve eyesight in older individuals who've got eyesight that's actually going wrong. Now, of course, like anything else in longevity, the claims can get overblown as well. However, I'm pretty impressed at like sort of the broad applications of red light. And Dr. Jeffrey is clear that red light, of course, isn't a therapy, sort of a cure all, but there's actually a lot of evidence that some of this hype out there is actually for real. So, really interesting conversation. I think it will serve you well to listen because it's an opportunity to sort of sort fact from fiction, which is what we like to do on this show. With that, here's my conversation with Dr. Glen Jeffrey. Okay, today, my guest is Dr. Glen Jeffrey. He's a pioneering researcher in the field of vision science and aging. He's a distinguished neuroscientist at the Institute of Ophthalmology, University College London, where he leads groundbreaking research on age-related eye conditions and innovative treatments to combat vision decline. His work has been a big contributor in our understanding of how light affects cellular health, particularly in the retina. His research on deep red light has shown remarkably good potential in improving vision in aging individuals and other longevity implications as well. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Great, great. And yeah, we have sort of an interesting topic to talk about red light because it is in that area where, obviously you have shown there's a significant benefit in terms of real science here, but it is one of those areas that seems to be target of a lot of products and sales in this multi-billion-dollar industry of longevity. So I'm interested in kind of separating fact from fiction. But why don't you start with this, Dr. Jeffrey? Can you explain to our audience sort of the significance of red light as it, what exactly is red light? And specifically, how you found that it interacts with the mitochondria to improve their energy production.
Yeah, well, I think a lot of the importance of red light is the red light we don't see. Our visual range goes from about 400 to 700 nanometers. 700 nanometers is when you start to get deeper red light. But beyond 700 nanometers that you don't see is the infrared range. Now, we've evolved under
Yeah.
sunlight, and sunlight has got vast amounts of infrared in it. And our mitochondria that provide energy for cell function are actually quite sensitive to light. And they've evolved under red light. Um, the problem that we face at the moment is that we now live in buildings, and these buildings are illuminated by LEDs, and LEDs don't produce any red light. Even
Hmm.
warm LEDs don't produce very much red light. So our bodies are sitting here after 5 million years of evolution, having been outside in a lot of red light, and suddenly we're inside and we're not getting very much red light.
Right.
So the red light is important for mitochondria because mitochondria fundamentally are just batteries. They provide the body with energy. As you get older, battery runs down. As you get sick with a lot of diseases, some of them are specifically mitochondrial diseases, battery runs down. The thing that we didn't really appreciate was that that longer wavelength light actually acts to recharge the battery. So we're facing a bit of a problem at the moment, and the problem is we're living indoors. We're not getting that long wavelength light, that deep red light, and so our mitochondria suffer. Now, mitochondria not only are terribly important in the fact that they regulate metabolism, but they regulate aging. So
Mm.
when the battery really runs down in the cell, the mitochondria puts its hand up and says, time to die. And the cell
Let's talk
dies.
specifically, though, I guess the role of, whether it's a 670 nanometer wavelength, right? Basically these wavelengths of red light. What are they doing specifically to the mitochondria that helps them to
Mm.
do their job better?
Okay, so if we look at our mitochondria, one things it does is it passes an electron along through a series of stages. And that end stage is a stage where you produce ATP. So the electron moves along, and when it reaches that final stage, it produces ATP, which is this enormous energy that we run on. We generate our own body weight in it every day. That final stage is absorbing long wavelength light. When it absorbs that long wavelength light, you can think about it as lubricating an engine. It
Mm.
actually increases the efficiency of that electron moving along the electron transport chain. So we've now got a fairly good idea of the mechanism of what's going on. What we didn't really appreciate was the validity of this in our modern society and its importance for our general health.
What about in terms of aging, though? I'm guessing because of its application that you have in various macular degeneration and things like that, that this is a problem more in the elderly than say in children. And why might that be?
Well, definitely the case is a problem for the elderly. I'm getting old, so I'm really interested in it.
Sure.
It's a problem because as we age, our batteries run down. We've
Uh-huh.
simply got less energy. One of the main theories of aging is the mitochondrial theory of aging, and it simply says you run your energy down. Now, it's interesting because the analogy with the battery goes a little bit further. Your old car battery, the energy runs down, but it also starts to leak acid around the terminals.
Sure.
Your mitochondria does
Mm.
exactly the same. As it runs down, it produces something that drives inflammation, reactive oxygen species.
Hmm.
And as we age, we produce less energy, we produce more reactive oxygen species. So it's actually a societal problem. And I think really it's a public health problem.
When I think about the mitochondrial health and various supplements. And we're generally talking about things like ubiquinol or there's urolithin A, all these types of
Yeah.
things. In some regards, can you think of these light? This type of therapy is analogous to those types of supplements.
Well, I suppose you can. The difference is the magnitude of the effect. The magnitude of the effect of red light is really very dramatic compared with the magnitude of those supplements. So
Mm-hmm.
if we shine red light and we measure the amount of extra energy that's being produced, it's fast, it's rapid, and it goes up very quickly.
All right, we're going to take a quick break.
Longevity Junky is grateful to our partners at BioAccelerator for a very memorable trip and experience.
Agreed. Buck and I both benefited greatly from this incredible stem cell therapy, which can play a huge role in longevity.
You may know BioAccelerator is one of the leading stem cell research laboratories in the world, delivering advanced therapies directed at anything from anti-aging, pain relief, skin rejuvenation, and even preventive care.
It's truly inspiring work that can help each and every one of us. And if you want to learn more, please reach out to Liz at Longevity Junky at bioaccelerator.com for special discounts and offers. That's Longevity Junky, spelled with a Y, at BioAccelerator.com for special discounts and offers. Welcome back to Longevity Junky.
And it goes up very quickly. You can see it.
How do you
It's
measure that?
hard. We measure that in a number of ways. First of all, we can actually biopsy and
Mhm.
look at the ATP in the tissue. But now we have optical methods where a mitochondria, when it works hard, is a bit like you. When you run up the stairs, you vasodilate and you get a bit red.
Yeah.
Mitochondria do the same. As they work hard, they change their color. Now, with some fairly advanced technology, what we can do is we can shine a light at them and look at the light that's reflected back and watch how they're changing color as they work hard. So we've got a really good actual handle on that. You can measure it biochemically, you can measure it with optical engineering techniques, or you can measure it directly. If you say to a fly, "You're a really old fly, I'm giving you a burst of red light and I'm measuring how quickly you walk," you get a result.
Yeah.
So we do it biochemically, we can do it optically, and we can just ask how the organism improves.
Speaking of flies, your research sort of spans both the insect world, and you've done some clinical things as well. Not necessarily animals, right? Not so much mice and that kind of thing. But tell us a little bit about the research, specifically animals, and then how that's related to some of the clinical trials that you've been involved with.
So you want to do large numbers, you eventually go down to a fly. And a
Sure.
mitochondria in a fly is very similar to a mitochondria in you and I. So, look, what's the big question? The big question is, how do we live longer and how do we stay healthy as we age? I don't want to make 120 and be miserable and unhappy.
Sure.
So, if we take old flies and we expose them to red light, quite simply, unambiguously, they live longer, right? They don't live absolutely longer. What happens is a big chunk of the middle-aged deaths go. And we've done that also in actually a study I just loved. We've done it with bees.
Uh-huh.
Again, big populations, you get exactly the same result. Now, you can't do that with mice very easily,
Yeah.
laboratory mice, because laboratory mice can live up to 2 years. It's going to cost you a fortune. Can't do it with humans. But what you find in a fly, you find in a human normally. So I think that was the apex of our animal research.
Uh-huh. So in terms of flies, it sounds like what you found was analogous to saying you improved their health span, but not their lifespan. Is that
Well, we do improve the average lifespan,
right?
but I think the big punch is health span.
Right.
That's where we need to be.
Got it.
Um,
And then how about in terms of clinical trials? Tell us what you're seeing there. What have
okay,
you seen?
so um, I'll tell you a bad story first, which is, of
Okay.
course, we went straight in and we did a clinical trial for macular degeneration with red light.
Mhm.
And we were bitterly disappointed. We didn't get an effect. But the critical mistake we made was that we recruited patients
It's too
too
late.
far down the road.
That makes
You
sense. I
know,
was going to say
it's just too far. Now,
if they're blind
another
already,
group,
it's not going to help.
yeah,
Right.
another group in the UK has
Yeah.
replicated that, doing a much better job. They've got a result, right? So macular degeneration has been slowed with red light. I'm
Hmm.
very pleased it's done. We've moved off in two different directions. So we have a clinical trial running for a disease called retinitis pigmentosa. I can't tell you the results of that because I don't know them. As you know, they're very often
Sure.
barred until we get a full result. Where we also have, I must say, one of the best results in my life, and the one that I mean really touched all of us, is mitochondrial children, children that have mitochondrial disease. Their mitochondria just physically cannot produce much ATP, and these kids, they are relatively immobile. Many of them die in their 20s through heart failure, and we've been treating some of these children, and in some of them, we've had very dramatic results. We originally said our metric was how much can you open your eye because they don't have enough ATP to lift the eye muscles,
Uh-huh.
lift the eyelid muscles. We got a result in that within 2 weeks. Um, Kids generally improved quite a lot. When you treat with red light, after a period of time, it becomes systemic. Mitochondria talk to one another across the body. So we started to get improvements in mobility. Now, We can't do it with every child with mitochondrial disease, but we can do it with a significant number, and these kids have no alternative.
Mhm.
If we take the red light away, or if they get sick for some reason, then we take a step back and the child tends to regress a little bit, but we just come back in. We come back in later and we can take them back again.
So let's talk about delivery. I'm thinking again of this as a supplement or a drug or something analogous to that. How do you? I mean, does it need to be delivered through the eyes, or can you deliver? I don't know exactly the the physiology with the wavelengths, but does it matter where you deliver it to get the benefit?
Far less so than we thought. So obviously with the mitochondrial children, we were delivering it to the eye and they eventually their mobility improved. We've started delivering it. We work now quite a lot with architects and with lighting engineers and designers, and we're putting that lighting into buildings and we're getting improvements. So, to some extent, we're saturating people with that light. Some of these wavelengths are so long you can't see them, so people don't know they're there. When you ask the question about kind of delivery in different places, one of the key mitochondrial diseases is Parkinson's disease. Parkinson's disease starts because the mitochondria in a small little nucleus in your brainstem start to die. People have improved monkeys with Parkinson's disease with red light. And bizarrely, but we all know it's actually true, if you give the red light actually to the lower part of the body or to the legs, you eventually get an improvement because mitochondria will improve and then mitochondria in different parts of the body will all click in with that improvement. It
Mhm.
sounds far-fetched, but in actual fact, someone, a lady did a beautiful study published in Cell about 10 years ago establishing the principle mitochondria talk to one another. So,
They're also
that's the
migratory to a certain extent, right? I
yes,
mean,
they're migratory. Some people are arguing that they're found in blood. That's still out for debate. Some people are actually arguing that they unload cargoes, that they can move between cells. We've seen evidence for that as well. So we've got a very limited notion of what mitochondria can do. So we sit and think about them as generating energy. They do a
right.
lot more than that.
So your thought is maybe, or the theory is that maybe there's some sort of, I don't know, some sort of cytokine release from various cells, that are ultimately traveling through the body and reaching other organ systems and muscles and that kind of thing and potentially triggering the same response. Is that
Yeah. So we measured cytokines. We looked at them between normal mice and mice that had red light, and there were very strange changes. You always think about cytokines as unpleasant things. You've got to drive them down. They're bad
yeah.
news. But
Yeah.
that's not always true.
Yeah,
Um,
just signaling. Right.
it's a signaling mechanism. And the patterns of cytokine signaling were very different in mice that had had red light. Now, we are now in the process of repeating that in humans. And we're looking at serum from people that had red light, not had red light. And we're scanning that for a wide range of age